Hey, what's up, folks? How's it going? This is Avit here, and welcome to DevOps Challenger. So let's start with today's interview question. And today's interview question is, what are ingress controllers and how do they work? So if you have already watched my Kubernetes playlist, so there I have already covered ingress controller. But in this EKS series also, I'm going to cover all these questions with respect to EKS context. And so stay till the end. We'll have some interesting quiz. So you can participate in that and you can pause the video, try it out so that you know that you understood the concept, whatever we have discussed here. Uh, so let's start with this question. What are the ingress controller and how do they work? So what is ingress controller? So we have this Kubernetes pod which are running in AKS. And now when you are like, let's say it's a providing web service or API service. So from your browser, you're trying to access it, access the web service, or using Postman, you're trying to access the API service. So there should be some way so that it can accept external HTTP traffic. There should be a way so that it can accept, this pod can accept external HTTP traffic, then route it to the right service and pod, and optionally use the path or host names. So if you are hitting that website mycompany.com/web or mycompany.com/API, it should go to that particular service. Or it can be based on the host name. Like for example, api.example.com or web.example.com. So corresponding service it should go. So api.example.com, it should hit the API service. Similarly for uh, from xyz.example.com, it should go to the XYZ service. So this routing can happen based on the path or the host name, right? So where ingress comes in the picture. So ingress is like it's basically traffic rule book. So it's like a traffic router inside the Kubernetes. So it will contain rules like if you URL is like /API, then send the traffic to API service. If URL is /web, then send it to front end service. So based on that path, it's saying that go there. Or based on the host name, it's saying that go to this particular service. So it's just a rule, it's just a configuration. It doesn't do anything on its own. It doesn't do actual routing. So now it comes in this controller. So ingress is a rule. Ingress controller is the actual traffic manager, which will see the rule, and based on that rule, it will uh, manage the traffic. Means it will like driver will take the direction, right? So you are driving and you are following a rule that if you have to go to this pod or if you have to go to this building, you have to take right turn. So that's there in the maybe some guide or map or something, right? In the rule book. And here, ingress controller is the real traffic manager, the driver. It watches the ingress rules and sets up load balancer or reverse proxy. So common ingress controllers in EKS, AWS load balancer, AWS LB, based on AWS LB application load balancer, used for managed scalable load balancer. Other one is Nginx ingress load balancer, which is lightweight, customizable. So, if you have to look at analogy, ingress is like a traffic rule, and ingress controller is the driver which follows the rule. So ingress is like a rule when it doesn't do anything. Ingress controller actually does the thing. Okay. Next question is how do you configure ALB ingress controller in EKS? So you have ingress controller. Now question is how do you configure ALB ingress controller in EKS? So your goal is to like you want ALB to send traffic to Kubernetes apps running in EKS. So traffic will come, it will hit the ALB application load balancer, and then the traffic has to go to particular service and then pod. The first step will be you have to enable IAM OIDC provider. It's a one-time setup. IAM OIDC provider. So what is OIDC? OIDC is OpenID Connect. OpenID Connect. Right? So it's a standard way for clients to verify the identity of an end user based on the authentication performed by authorized server. So for authorized server, will you verify the client's identity? Okay. So, in the context of EKS and IAM, OIDC allows you to integrate external identity provider to authenticate users and grant them access to your Kubernetes cluster. So only authenticated user will be able to access Kubernetes cluster. And OIDC will provide that authentication, OpenID Connect. So this allows your AWS to trust Kubernetes cluster service accounts securely. EKS can talk securely to other AWS services. So this will allow you to create the trust. So EKS needs to talk to ALV. So that trust will be set up using this. So using IAM role, you will be doing that. So IAM role will get that trust. So how do you do that? You run this command AWS EKS and some configuration update, and where you have that OIDC configuration, and EKS your region update cluster configuration. Next thing is download ALB controller policy. What is controller policy? It needs permission to create and manage ALB. Now we have trusted ALB. In case like now that are allowed to should be allowed to create the ALB. So that means it should have the permission to create that. So just because you trusted someone, that doesn't mean that you are allowing to do some fixed task. Okay, you trust this guy and he will be able to do this well. And another guy, you trust him also, and he has a skill set for other things. So that way, role-based, permission-based, policy-based, you are setting up the trust and role and setup. Then the create IAM role plus EKS service account. Create a role with above permission. So this above permission, you got that. You got the IAM policy permission. Then link it to EKS cluster. That permission, you link it with the EKS cluster. So EKS cattle create IAM service account and you link it to the EKS cluster. And then finally, you install ALB controller using help. So you have OIDC enabled, you have downloaded that policy, right, which will be allowing you to create that ALB. Then you have linked that. Once you link that, you are now trusted and you are allowed to create. After that, you have to install that controller, the guy who will be doing the job, who will be actually watches your cluster and creates ALB when needed. Okay. And then create ingress resources with annotation. After that, you will be creating ingress resource. So ingress, that rule you will be creating. Rule book, right? So here you are saying that this is the rule. And if someone hits this path, then go to my service. Go to my service. This is the backend, my backend service. So to summarize, first enable OIDC in EKS so that AWS can trust the cluster. Then download the policy. That policy document you download. Then you create the role plus EKS service account so that it has the right permission to create that ALB. Then add ALB controller. That it's a brain that will be adding the ALB, create the ALB, the guy who will be actually doing the job, and finally ingress resource. That defines how ALB sends the traffic to your service. So it will define how ALB will be sending the traffic to your service. So when will you use ingress? When you want smart routing, HTTPS termination, and one ALB for multiple services. So you have one ALB and you have multiple services because based on the host name or based on the path. /API this service, /XYZ this service, /MLP this service. So mycompany.com/API, right? So based on the path, you can have different service. There will be one LB and there will be different service. So this way you are saving the cost. How do you implement SLS TLS termination with ALB? How do you implement SSL TLS termination with ALB? So what is the goal? You want to have secure access to your website or service. You want https myapp.com instead of http myapp.com. http myapp.com is not secure. So you want a secure thing. So first step is you have to create a SSL certificate. So go to AWS console, create the certificate. You will give the domain name that this is a www.myapp.com, mycompany.com, and then after verification of the email, you will get that certificate. That your certificate will be issued. So you created the certificate. Create the certificate. Then you will be annotate your ingress resource with HTTPS settings. So it's basically kind of configuration. Basically, you are giving extra information that in your ingress, this is the certificate URL. So this is the certificate Amazon resource name. This is the path where you get the certificate. And you are saying this is the listening port. Basically, some additional configuration you are providing. 443 SL rewrite will happen to 443. These are the ports. Right? So what does it mean? Certificate ARN tells ALB to use your SL certificate, whatever certificate you created. Listen ports, listen on both 80 and 443, and force users to always use HTTPS. Even if user goes to 80, it will be redirected to 443. So the redirection happens to HTTPS. Okay, so that's annotation. First, you create a certificate, you do the annotation. There you mention what you have to do, like a kind of configuration. Then add TLS section in your ingress variable. So in your ingress variable, you have to add the TLS section in your ingress variable file. This is the example ingress file. It's a tiny ingress file. And here you have the annotation like certificate ARN and 443, 80, etc. And this is the spec ALB rule myapp.com path / it should go to my service. Okay. And here you have mentioned the TLS itself. What happens in the end? So handles HTTPS SSL ALB outside your cluster. Application load balancer is outside your cluster. Traffic goes to your ALB. And once HTTPS transmission happens to your ALB, after that inside, it's HTTP traffic. Inside HTTP traffic to pod. So user connects securely. User connects from outside securely. But inside AWS environment, traffic stays fast and simple using HTTP. So inside is HTTP. It hits the traffic, HTTPS, and inside it's HTTP traffic. How do you configure path-based and host-based routing? So we have already covered that the goal is to route traffic based on the domain name or path. So this is like user aids on this example.com API service /web, it goes to web service. Right? So host-based routing, match the domain. So based on the domain, path-based routing, match the path. And based on that, you route the traffic smartly. So create the ingress YML, and there you can do host-based and path-based. So this is an ingress file where you have ingress class is ALB and host-based routing. Host name I have specified, and path-based, this is the path you have specified, and the backend service you specified. Right. What's happening? ALB listens to incoming request to app example.com. It checks path. If it is API, if user is hitting .com/API, it forwards to API service. If user is hitting .com/web, it forwards to web service. So ALB does layer 7 routing, smart routing using the ingress rule. So application load balancer does this routing using the ingress rule at layer 7. So user goes to this .com/API. ALB reads that host and path, and then ALB forwards it to your service pod /web. The host routing, path routing based on API and path. Backend target is API service, web service in a case. Load balancer handles outside traffic, outside the cluster. Outside the cluster, traffic comes, and then it sends the traffic to the proper pod, proper service, and then backend pod. Next question is, what are the annotation used and with ALB in this context? So what are the annotation? So annotation is like an extra instruction for ALB ingress controller. It's like an extra instruction. They customize how ALB will behave. So you change the ALB behavior, how ALB will behave. So metadata is a standard field. In Kubernetes, metadata is a standard field for naming, labeling, etc. Configuration refers to the core spec. Configuration is a core specification for particular object. What are the configuration? And this annotation is extra. Annotation is when the data is not used to identify or select output. Information is mostly used by the controller, like ALB ingress controller, to augment the behavior. So don't affect how Kubernetes schedules or manage pods directly. They are just extra instructions. It's just like a configuration, right? Like you are saying that for this SSL, you have to use this as certificate, this is the port, like a configuration, but it's not a configuration. So it's different from your metadata and configuration. So we also have this annotation in engagement. So we have metadata, we have configuration, we have annotation. So annotation is, it's not a core thing, it's just some extra instruction. So some example annotation, a slash scheme, you can specify internet facing or internal, private or whatever. Then certificate ARN, we have seen this. You specify that certificate is something. SL redirect, It forces user to use HTTPS only. Listen port tells ALB to listen on specific port like HT or 443. Then target type, set IP so ALB can forward traffic directly to EKS port. Not for EC2 instance, directly to EKS port it can transfer traffic. Target types, health check path, you specify the health check path, like for example /health. So you are specifying the health check path. This is another annotation. Group name, group multiple ingress into single LB. Multiple ingress into single LB and load balancer attributes, some of the advanced attribute, timeout, access log, etc. And this is like example annotation. This is the ingress file. This is the ingress file. Okay, my ingress, and there are some annotations. Internet facing, certificate, 443, IP, health rate, my apps, attributes, right? Attributes like logs enabled to, logs bucket, my log bucket, some attributes here specifically. Okay. So scheme a public or private LB certificate we specified SL direct. So they are different annotations. So they are the concept we discussed. Ingress, set of rules to route external traffic into the cluster. How external traffic will come inside and routed. Then ingress controller, load balancer or reverse proxy that follows those rules. Ingress controller, which actually follows the rule. This is the rule. AWS LB controller. EKS use AWS LB to route this thing. So when you are saying AWS LB controller, so LB controller, LB, AWS LB will be used to route the traffic. Service versus ingress. So service exposed a pod. Service exposes a pod. Ingress routes across services. So service it exposes pod because pods are ephemeral. It keeps on changing. So that's why we have a service. Service it exposes pod. Pods come and go. We have a service. API service, web service. Multiple service exposed by ALB. Traffic comes to ALB, goes to service, then pod. TLS with ALB. Use certification, certificate and annotation for HTTPS. Path host routing, ingress can map API or web example.com to correct service. Annotation is the fine tune how LB behaves for your app. Okay? It's some extra instructions how your LB will behave. So now let's go to the quiz section. You can pause the video and you can try to answer. Okay. Pause the video and try to answer. What is the primary function of an ingress in Kubernetes? Primary function is route external HTTPS traffic to service. Ingress manages how user access your app from internet over HTTPS. What is the role of an ingress controller? Role of an ingress controller is, you can pause the video and try to answer. Application runs monitor controls for security. Implement and enforce ingress rules. C. Role of a ingress controller is implement and enforce ingress rules. Which of the following is a valid ingress controller for AWS EKS? S. Ingress load balancer network controller. Which one is the valid AWS load balancer controller? Before installing the LB ingress controller, which of the following must be set up? YDC provider or IAM role? YDC provider or IAM role? Before you install ALP ingress controller, you need to set up YDC provider OpenID Connect. And this lets you EKS service account talk securely with AWS service. Which tool is commonly used to install ALB ingress controller in AKS? How do you install AWS ALB ingress controller in AKS? Answer is C, Helm. Which Kubernetes objects allow advanced HTTP routing using path serverless? Which Kubernetes object? Ingress. What is true about Kubernetes service? Contaminate ASL, export pods using IPDNS. Which of the following feature is provided only by ingress, not by service? Answer is B, path-based routing. Where should SSL certificate created for ALB TLS termination? It should be created in AWS Certificate Manager ACM. Okay. Then which ingress annotation is used for specify SSL certificate ARN? ALB ingress Kubernetes certificate ARN, that is C. What does ALB do after SSL termination? Forward traffic as HTTP to backend pods. Answer is C. What does host-based routing allows in ingress rules? Route based on incoming domain. What should be this target type is a quick case for pod level routing? Target type C, IP. Pod level routing, target type you have to set IP. EKS uses pod IP so that target value will be IP. So that's it for today. Hope you like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, DevOps Challenge Hub, and also follow my LinkedIn page, DevOps Challenge Hub. I post quiz content daily and you can participate in that. And please follow my WhatsApp channel. I post regular updates there. Thank you for watching this video and see you again in the next video.